Welcome, Carl.
Greetings, Michael. Super glad to be talking again.
Happy preemptive New Year, like pre-New Year. It is December, almost New Year's. By the time this runs, it will be New Year's because, secret out of the bag, we don't record these live. They're recorded slightly in advance, so the video and podcasting folks can do their video and podcasting things. So, early Happy New Year.
You too?
Looking forward to a good 2020.
Yeah, super excited. My daughter, who's 15, just told me yesterday, she's like, this is such a big deal. It's my first, she didn't really know what to call it. Like, first turnover of a century. I'm like, no, it's not a century. She's like, a decade? Yeah, it's a decade. So anyway, really exciting times, 2020.
It's like anytime you're driving, like the first time you watch that odometer trip over, like it's an exciting time when you roll a new zero.
Yeah, for sure.
A new zero onto the end.
Yeah.
So what's your plan for 2020? Right? This is like the season of New Year's resolutions. We all decide what we're going to do differently in the new year.
Yeah.
So what's your New Year's resolution? What's your do differently in 2020 thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but I've become, the last couple of years, I've sort of solidified this love I have of big impossible goals, which I've finally gotten comfortable with that idea. I didn't realize I did, but big impossible goals just because of their sheer gravitational pull.
Like one-page financial plan?
Yeah, something like that. Like change the financial industry forever, like some big gravitational, it's a big goal because of their gravitational pull. And then the idea of micro actions, but like taking steps towards it. But what that always makes me think about is this need, and maybe we want to talk about this, like this constant pressure we all feel to sort of hustle, right? Like to crush it, to go faster, to go bigger, to do more, right? So that's, as soon as I hear the word, like, what's your goals? That's what I think of, like big, go fast, gas pedal down, full gas. So maybe we want to talk about that. But before we do, what are you thinking for 2020? What goals do you have?
For me, it's part of an ongoing, an ongoing evolution that, the cycle for my own business growth over the past 10 years was, lots of work early on, and just, as you said, like that hustle phase, like just get revenue growing, go your business, make sure you survive, keep moving forward. Then it started working, and you're like, woo, this is awesome. And it starts compounding, and then starts compounding a little more. And then all of a sudden you go, oh my God, like it's kind of a lot of business coming in. It's getting a little bit busy. And it's getting a lot busy. And I spent, frankly, a couple of years from probably, 2015 through last year, just being buried, like kind of succumbing to the success of compounding, like, oh, this is working well. Oh crap, this might be working too well. And have been just trying to figure out like how to regain a little bit of control over my time, over work-life balance. That's been a lot of hiring team and expanding and shifting a lot of my role within the business. And like, I think 2020 for me, I've got kind of one more year of this, of building team bigger and making some of these adjustments. And then I'm sort of mentally ready for the next phase. But it's been living a couple of years of penance of, this is what happens when you get behind the hiring curve on the growth of your business, and it buries you for a while.
It's so interesting to me when you start to realize that, like, you can kind of hustle your way to a certain point. And whether that's revenue or income or influence or whatever, like your measuring stick is, and I actually mean that, like, I'm not talking about just revenue or income, but whatever your measuring stick is, you can sort of hustle your way to a certain point. And then you have to realize, like, you can't hustle beyond that, right? Like, your ability to hustle, two things happen. One, I do believe your ability just to work at that level, I believe, starts to decline. Either we get wiser, or we're just sort of like age starts to say, hey, look, you can't quite push it that hard.
Yeah.
Or you start to realize like, wait, it's just actually not possible, right? You can't hustle past a certain point. I don't know what that point is. I had a friend say to me the other day, like, you can hustle your way to $1 million in revenue, but you can't hustle your way to 10 million, right? Like it just like, it's not gonna work. So I think it is interesting when you get, and I'm wondering about, so one of my big goals last year and again this year is to incorporate this idea. I sort of consider myself a modern day idea hunter, right? Like I'm a hunter. If I was, there's no doubt, like if I was born whenever, long time ago when we were running around, I would have been no good for anything except hunting. Like,
Okay.
you put me in charge of the garden, there's no way. Like, this is not gonna, it's something that took consistent, like day after day after day eaten. But if I'm told to go like hunt something, and I notice this because I'm constantly, even now, I'm constantly scanning the bushes, right? Like, and I don't mean like just real bushes, but any bush. Like, is there a lion in there? So I'm sort of wired for hunting. And it shows up in the form of like new ideas, naming something, figuring out a strategy, a different way to approach something, creative work. Like that's what I'm wired for. And so I, like in the old days, it seems to me based on what I've read, like you would go hunting and it may last a day, it may last a couple weeks, it may last a couple months, right? But then you'd come back and there would be some rest, right? And I think that's the part that I have not really understood very well up until like maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. I started to get the idea that if you're going to be switched on, sort of like hunting and all the fight or flight stuff that goes along with that, the adrenaline rush, like all of the stuff that goes on, you've got to remember to build in rest. And I'm not exactly talking about work-life balance. I'm just talking about the idea of like, as knowledge workers, people who work with ideas, there's a tendency for us to think we can do this, 24 hours a day because it's, there's no calluses on our hands, right? Like it's not physically backbreaking. But we just can't. It seems to me like the ability, the curve of our effectiveness, and for those of you who are just listening, I'm sort of drawing a downward sloping curve. And I think even if you were to plot the peaks and valleys, the peaks are getting lower and the valleys are getting deeper as you continue to push that hard on cognitive work. So people who do knowledge work for a living, I think it requires chunks of unstructured time, chunks away from the phone, time outside, time at rest. So I'm really interested, and then I'll be quiet because I want to hear what you have to say about this. I think that those chunks of unstructured time, that rest, is a prerequisite. So let's just use free time. Free time is a prerequisite for doing the kind of work we do, not a reward. Right? So so I can very comfortably, it's taken me a couple of years to get comfortable with this, but I can very comfortably say to the team, to family, like, this hike I'm going on is work. This nap I'm taking, this one's a little harder, but this nap I'm taking is work. Because if I don't do it, a couple weeks from now, I will be starting on a downward trend in terms of my ability to sort of deliver on a cognitive level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, so the whole like, this nap I'm taking is work. I get it conceptually, but that might be a little bit of a leap for me. I got to warm up to that one. But to me, the essence of what you're talking about is sort of the double-edged coin of both burnout, like what happens when you push too long, too hard, right? You burn out. Your work quality declines, your focus declines, like, lower peaks, lower troughs. You go down that downward cycle. And I think the positive flip side of that, which is being well rested, is a prerequisite to doing good work in the first place, right? It's still like the number one tip I give to CFP exam test takers every exam cycle is there comes a point when you're 24 hours out from your exam, stop studying,
Right.
go rest, and go to sleep early, because nothing you're going to learn in the last hour of the 3-month studying process you're doing is likely to have as much positive impact on your ability to pass that exam tomorrow as going into it well rested.
Yeah.
From a good night's sleep the night before. So there is kind of this rest is both the recovery to recharge from burnout, but the prerequisite to do your best work in the first place.
Yeah, and I just think we forget. I mean, so maybe let's just clarify that as a planner or as somebody who gives professional financial advice for a living, that advice is creative work. I don't really care if you want to call it that, but it is creative work, right? The ability to take in, it's technically detailed and technically oriented work, but you also have to come up with creative solutions and you have to think about things. And I can't believe how bright it just got in my office. So I guess we'll just roll right through that. I think the sun just came out outside New Zealand. And I would adjust it if I could, but I can't. Actually, you know what? Let's just be crazy. Don't edit this out. I'm just going to go over here real quick, and I'm going to close these blinds, and we're going to keep rolling because that was just too much. Here we go. There, that's better. When it gets sunny in New Zealand, it gets sunny quick. So I think we forget, we don't give ourselves permission to realize, this is cognitively demanding work. And it's especially cognitively demanding from a resilience perspective when you're looking people in the eyes, people who've cried in your office, whether they've cried or not, but how important these goals are, how important this money is. Markets get scary. You have to give mission critical advice in the face of irreducible uncertainty, right? You do not know exactly how it's going to work out. You have the weighty evidence of history behind you, sure, but you still don't know. That is demanding. And I think we sort of, at least my experience has been, because it's not back-breaking work, right? I used to say all the time, well, at least I'm not digging ditches. We don't realize the need for recovery. So it would be a little bit like, I work out I've got a strength coach here in New Zealand that trains a bunch of the current All Blacks. So New Zealand All Blacks, that's like going into the gym and seeing, in New Zealand, that's like going into the gym and seeing LeBron James in your gym, right? If those guys were to come in and work out 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? You would never do that to a muscle. But we think we can do that to our brains. And I think we just need a little bit of a little bit of permission to realize hey, if we want to have long, resilient careers, we've got to learn to rest a bit. We've got to learn to recover a bit.
Well, and it reminds me, even the old Dan Sullivan strategic coach work used to encourage advisors, you manage your calendar around basically 3 types of days, your focus days, which is the good old, get the clients, make it rain, do the work days, buffer days, which are essentially their preparation days for the big focus days, and then free days, putting in free days, scheduled free days where you're just away from the business and resting and rejuvenating and trying to get some some of that energy back if you're burning out, or as you framed it, the work naps that come up from, because this is part of the work, this part of what we need to do to be fresh and come at work positively.
Well, and the definition, Dan Sullivan's, that works amazing to me because it flies in the face of all the you know, all the sort of cool bro hustle porn, if I can call it that, around like, you know, entrepreneurship is like, what did Elon Musk say? It's like crawling, eating glass and, you know, whatever. Like, and Dan Sullivan, on the other hand, says, no, it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like,
Right.
And I think the definition of a free day, in Dan Sullivan's words, strategic coach definition of a free day, is 24-hour period where you don't talk, think, or do work. And Dan, I can't remember what his number is, but I think he takes like 150 of those a year. Like, think back, like everybody listening, think back. Can you think of a day? Hopefully a bunch of you can, but I talk to a lot of my friends that can't think of a day. And I honestly can't, when you add think about work or talk about it, like my wife is constantly listening to me talk about new ideas. Right. And so I think we even lie to ourselves about our own rest. You know, checking email. I've recently implemented a policy where I have to take a cold shower, a 90-second cold shower, full cold, before any screen time.
Like you like Pavlovian training yourself to resent your screen.
No, it's like, I have a philosophy that cold shower is greater than coffee. So like, there we go. We're going to have a whole nother conversation, I'm sure. But the cold shower, like the research is really clear. But my point really is, it's shocking. Like, we all know you shouldn't check this thing before you go to bed. And we all know it shouldn't be the first thing you check when you wake up. Like, the research is clear. There's no debate. And yet, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but in my conversations with people, most people do anyway. And so I think just this idea of getting really clear, I don't think this means work less. I don't think it means be less productive. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think if we can get clear, at least what I'm finding is if I can get clear about rest, giving myself a break, really intentionally, I'm actually far more productive, not less. And that low level thing that we pretend is work, like totally pretend. Don't tell me. I'm in a co-working space right now. The only thing that doesn't happen here is work. Like, everybody, they're like, I can see their computer. They're on Facebook and Twitter all day. Like if we just got clear about like work and rest, things would, I think we're more productive.
So as 2020 kicks off, what are you doing differently in this, you know, year of finding a better balance between work and rest?
I'm trying to be really, really clear about what work is, right? Like what work, and then even more, like back to Dan Sullivan, like what's my unique ability? Like what are the activities that only I should be doing? Mm-hmm. And then as I have the luxury, which I don't completely have right now, but as I have the luxury, offloading those things that are like, I keep a do not do list. And they're like the things that I least like, things that have to be done that I least like to do. And every 90 days, I'm picking one of them and I'm getting rid of it. We're either deleting it or we're delegating it. And I'm just trying to get more clear about work and then more clear about the line. Like, okay, great. You're done with that. Stop, like go on a walk, go on a 20-minute walk, spend time outside. Can you take one full day off a week? Right? Like, and by one full day, I mean like full free time. Can you take a vacation without spending all the time just haranguing your spouse or friends or partners about all the cool new ideas you have? Those are the kind of things I'm trying to implement. How about you?
So for me, when I got buried a couple of years ago, you know, the challenge for me was just figuring out where the line was. And you know, I'm a bit of a workaholic. I'm a bit of a workhorse. Like I've always been able to just, I think, put in a few more hours to get a bit more stuff done than most, which is why everyone wonders if I sleep. I really do sleep. I actually need my sleep. I'm just really good at being productive. But my challenge was that I managed to still bury myself in that process, and I just added more and more until I was borderline breaking myself.
Well,
And
can I interrupt? I really want to dig in here for a second. I know but what does borderline breaking yourself mean? Like, how did that show up? How did you know?
Just being tired, not having the same energy that I had before, you know, feeling like I couldn't even get the mental space to do the level of work that I wanted to do because it was just always ticking off the last item that I was trying to make sure I was keeping up on because I just had more stuff than time.
Okay.
So it wasn't at least for me, like it wasn't literally a burnout stage. It was just a very direct overload stage.
Okay.
And the way that I ultimately got at least some control of it and have sort of worked it back over the years is I fell in love with this analogy that I'm told originally came from Stephen Covey, that you can think of your time as like a jar, like a big glass mason jar, right? So it's a fixed finite container. Everybody gets the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 168 hours a week to do their stuff. And so as sort of the story goes for this, you can think of your time of like the things that you do in three types. There's the big heavy things that you do, like the one or two big things that move the needle every day and every week. Those are like big rocks that you can put in the jar. Then there's sort of the medium-sized tasks that are important. They're material. They're not big rocks, but they matter. It's like these are pebbles. And then there's all the email, all the social media, all the miscellaneous stuff that crops up. Like this is the fine sand that just, forever keeps pouring in. And so the challenge that most people have is, the jar fills up heavily with sand because like the emails never end. Then we grab a few important items when we get a moment here and there. So we put in a few more pebbles. And so now if you imagine the mason jar that's like 2/3 filled with sand and then mostly filled to the brim with pebbles, and you're holding this big rock and there's no freaking way you're going to get the rock inside the jar because you've already filled the jar with the sand and the pebbles.
Right.
And so the way that you manage around this is you place the big rocks first. So if you imagine like pour the mason jar back out, put the jar back in front of you, put the big giant rock first. So you know it's getting done because you put it in first. Now put the pebbles in second, right? If you got a big jar with a weird shaped big rock, like you kind of envision what happens. The pebbles will sort of like drift around the big rock and settle into the open gaps. Then take the sand and pour the sand in on top. And it will slowly drain down and fill in every single possible crevice because, fine sand, that's what it does. Right. So you're still going to fill the jar because there's only so much time and we've all got the same time. But when you put the big rocks in first, you get the big rocks in and done. If you place the big rocks last, there's never enough room to get them done. And so the way that I decided to embody this, and I started this, I guess, 4 years ago now, and I'm still doing it, that I actually sit down for the year and line up like what all my big rocks are throughout the year. Like I need, we still publish the blogs. Like I need this many days to do writing. I have this many days to do speaking. I have this many days that I still need to be in the advisory firm for team meetings or client meetings or whatever it is. I need this many days just to do our internal team meetings. Mondays I just run all of our team meetings, so every Monday is just spoken for because I gotta be a good leader for the business and manage the team. And so I essentially programmed out for the year, like, look, there's only so many working days in the year. You can't do multiple big rocks in a day because you run out of room in the jar. And so I only get one big rock a day, and I only get so many days of the year. And so it got really easy to figure out where my exact capacity limitation was because I just started lining up the rocks and I ran out of days. And That's clearly the cutoff. And so what I've done now over the past couple of years is start to rejigger these days. So year one was just, so at least if I put this in place, I can figure out when I have to start saying no, because I'm literally out of time. And then for the past 3 years since then, I've been starting to shift around what those rocks are. So less doing, more leading, building team behind me so I can hand some rocks off, but then I got to take some management rocks on. But slowly and steadily shifting my time, and also just trying to bring the aggregate load down. So last year I got to just start putting on a few rocks that are just work on the business and not in the business days. And my goal in 2020 is to actually just have a few of these rest days that start to get onto the calendar as, you know, a big rock for the day may be a free day, or, you know, your version of I'm working by taking this nap. That just
what would you do on one of those rest days?
Oh, I'll probably still end out just reading business books and getting new ideas. I can't completely unplug. Like, my limits do kick in at some point. But just getting some of that creative free space back without always be stuck in the doing of the business, that I think just it happens to virtually all of us. When we've been doing this long enough, you accumulate enough clients, you accumulate enough business success, and that phenomenon starts to kick in where the business just starts to pull more and more of your time, and it's very hard to draw those boundaries. And at least for me, like, that was the way I was able to redraw the boundaries, get control of my time and my days by saying, like, here's exactly for the year what I have the capacity for. You know, you only get roughly 5 business days a week, 50 weeks a year or so. Like, you only get 250 rocks.
Yeah.
So decide exactly what you want to do at that time. Because it's literally all you get. There ain't any more. We don't get any more time.
Yeah, I really wish I'd been, and I'm gonna do this next year. I mean, I've already started, but just being more intentional, right? That's what I hear you saying. Like, just being more intentional, more thoughtful about it. And also being really aware, which I think we should talk about in another episode, but really aware about the gap between what I say I'm doing, like what I really value, the gap between what I say I value and what I'm actually doing.
Yep.
And I've been measuring my time recently, how I use time on rescue time, and I totally lie to myself, right? And exposing that inauthenticity, exposing that lie more often so that I can close it and benefit in service of right? Like, so yeah, I think just being more intentional. So that, to me, that's the message. 2020, it would be like, I just want to grant, like, I've declared myself self-appointed king of permission granting. So I sort of want to grant everybody listening, like, we're granting you.
Grant us permission. Grant us, I've
got my granting wand.
Oh man, for those who are listening on the podcast, he's waving the Sharpie like a wand, like a regal scepter.
Yeah, exactly.
We are being deigned.
I will grant you, like, you send me an email, send it to hello@behaviorgap.com for the permission that you seek, and I will grant it. If it has to do with resting, I will grant you permission. You can print out your permission slip. You can show it to your spouse, your partner, your colleagues, whoever, like, permission granted to rest a little bit.
Amen.
Amen, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Looking forward to a year of slightly more restfulness.
There you go. Amen.